Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continuing with Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, text number 23. We'll cover 23 till the end of the chapter. Yeapyanya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvitaha te api mam eva kaunteya yajanti avidipurvakam. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. Amalan, we are doing chapter 9, verse 23. Purport. Persons who are engaged in the worship of demigods are not very intelligent, although such worship is offered to me indirectly. Krishna says, for example, when a man pours water on the leaves and branches of a tree without pouring water on the root, he does so without sufficient knowledge or without observing regulative principles. Similarly, the process of rendering service to different parts of the body is to supply food to the stomach. The demigods are, so to speak, different officers and directors in the government of the Supreme Lord. One has to follow the laws made by the government, not by the officers or directors. Similarly, everyone is to offer his worship to the Supreme Lord only. That will automatically satisfy the different officers and directors of the Lord. The officers and directors are engaged as representatives of the government, and to offer some bribe to the officers and directors is illegal. This is stated here as avidhi purvakam. In other words, Krishna does not approve the unnecessary worship of the demigods. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So far in this chapter we have seen, it started off with Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam. Krishna tells Arjuna that this Bhagavad Gita, this knowledge is the king of education, and also says that this process is joyfully performed. Then later on, he tells Arjuna that those who are not faithful on this path, they come back into the cycle of birth and death. Then, of course, we heard the different opulences of Lord Krishna, not many, just a few opulences of Lord Krishna. And he also tells Arjuna, Avajananti Mamudha, that fools deride me when I descend in the human form. And the very important verse he talks about in the early verses of this chapter is Satatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantascha Dhridavita. They're always chanting. He's suggesting to Arjuna that always chanting his holy name. That is important. Of course, we also learned in this chapter where Krishna says that he's the seed-giving father, he's a father, he's the enjoyer, he is the Vedas. And also a very important verse where he says that if one has exclusive devotion to me, then he says, I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So this is what we have learned so far in this chapter. And here we see in this verse number 23, Krishna is talking about demigod worship. He says, those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. So here Krishna is very clearly telling us that it is not necessary to worship demigods. It's not an intelligent thing to do. Why? Because it's an indirect worship. And he also says avidhi purvakam, which means a wrong way. Nice example. And if you all remember, we read the purport of Srila Prabhupada, where it's also talking about watering the root of the tree and not just the leaves and the flowers and the fruits. No, unless we water the roots, unless we feed the stomach, that is how he's explaining that if we feed the stomach and if we pour water on the roots, then the whole tree gets nourished. And when we put the food in the stomach, then the whole body, all the senses, all the parts of the body, they get nourished. So similarly, he says that when one worships Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then automatically all the demigods are also satisfied. They also get the worship because this is being done in a direct way and in the right way. So why do people worship demigods? Because of lack of knowledge. They are unable to understand who is the Supreme Lord. Yeah, and in the purport we saw, it says that demigods, they are like officers, right? They are like the managers. They are not the owners. They are representatives of the Supreme Lord, and they are working under his direction. So it's important that we worship Krishna, and then all demigods will automatically be satisfied. A very important point was discussed in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, where he says that worshipping demigods is like offering bribe, which is illegal. Like we are trying to worship the demigods because we want something in return. Like, let me do this worship and this is what my desire is. I want my desire to be fulfilled, and that is considered as illegal. The next verse he says, I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. You see, he says, Aham hi sarva yajnanam. Yagna means another name for Vishnu. Lord Vishnu's another name is Yagna. And if you remember, we had learned this verse in chapter 3, Yagnarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. That work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage. So here again, Yagna, again Lord Vishnu is being referred to here, that Krishna says, I am the only enjoyer. I am the master of all the yagnas that you perform, all the sacrifices. And if a person does not recognize that, then a person falls down. So, Yagnartha, unless we satisfy Krishna, we will not be able to satisfy ourselves. And many sacrifices are listed in the scriptures, but in Kali Yuga, the yagna that is recommended, krite yad dhyayato Vishnu, right? So in Kali Yuga, the process is chanting the holy names of the Lord. That is the sacrifice. The mantra meditation, that's the sacrifice for Kali Yuga. Now, worshipping the demigods, we may get the results, but those results are actually coming from Krishna, plus those results are temporary. So that we need to understand. Now let's see the destination, verse number 25. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. It's very, very clear. Yanti Deva Vrita Devan. If we worship demigods, we go to demigod planet, right? But if we worship Krishna, then we will go to Krishna. Like for instance, in the purport it says, if one has any desire to go to the moon, the sun, or any other planet, one can attain the desired destination by following specific Vedic principles recommended for that purpose, such as the process technically known as Darsha Paurnamashi. See, these are vividly described in the fruitive activities portion of the Vedas, which recommends a specific worship of demigods situated on different heavenly planets. You see, these are heavenly planets. So one has to come back into this material world after one completes the the enjoying the fruits of one's actions, like good karma. When that good karma reactions finish, then we have to come back into this material world. So if we worship demigods, we go there. If we worship ancestors, we go where the ancestors are. If we worship ghosts, we go there. But if we worship Krishna, he says, then such devotees, they live with me. So we have a choice, we have, just like in Kroger and Publix we go, we have choice, different choices for different items, so we can choose what we want. So here also we should understand that knowledge is important, because if we have knowledge, then we can utilize our intelligence and make the right choice. An important verse, number 26. Patram pushpam phalam thoyam yome bhaktya prayachati. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. So, Krishna is making it clear what does he accept. Very, very clear, right? Fruit, leaf, water, or flower. These are the four things. Of course, in chapter 17, there will be an elaboration on this. Like there will be a description about foods that can be offered to the Lord in the mode of goodness. Right? What are the categories that fall in the food in the mode of goodness? That we will learn in chapter 17. But here, in this verse, Krishna is showing his mercy to us. He's saying, if you offer this, but the main ingredient is not water, leaf, fruit, or flower. It is love and devotion. That's the main ingredient. So if we follow this process, then that will help us to achieve pure bliss, right? And what is the qualification? Is just the desire to serve the Lord by even offering what we cook. It's a simple method. Very simple method of offering. And what is the result? The result is a sin-free life full of happiness and peace. And how do we offer? We cook the food which is recommended, which is in the mode of goodness, that is sattvic food. Then we, offer it to the Lord with a tulasi leaf, offer the prayers, and then what happens, right? Krishna accepts that, because if we have offered it with love and devotion, he accepts it, and he gives us prasadam, which is sanctified food, which is blessed food, which helps us to purify our senses, our body, our mind, intelligence, and even finer brain tissues, you see? And if this is only possible when devotion is there. And in this verse, twice devotion is mentioned in this verse. So bhakti is the only way. Krishna is only seeing the devotion. He doesn't need anything. He has everything, but he's giving us an opportunity so we can get purified. You see? So here, offering food is very important. If you remember, we also learned in chapter 3, Yagna Shishtashina Santo Muchyante Sarva Khilbishe Bhunjate Tve Agam Papam. Papam means sin. Krishna says that my devotees first offer the food to me and then they partake. Whereas those who prepare food for personal sense gratification, they are verily eating only sin. That is what Krishna tells us in chapter 3. So that gives us an indication that if we put anything in our mouth which is not offered to the Lord, the process, as I explained, we cook, we don't taste it, we, add a tulasi leaf and we offer it to the Lord, offer the prayers and offer it with love and devotion. That is the process of offering the food. So devotion is very, very important, and this helps us to get purified. Now Krishna says, I'm the enjoyer, and he's specifying what he wants, right? What does he want? And if we give him what he wants, then that is what pleases him, not what we like, you see? So that is very, very important. And why should we eat sin and suffer, right? Why not eat prasadam, which is purifying? Now, even the vegetables which are in the mode of goodness, we can offer to the Lord, but they also have life, right? So if we are chopping the vegetables and cooking them, we are actually taking life, right? So we should get sinful reactions. But no, Krishna takes away that sin of, taking the life of the vegetables, and instead he gives us the sanctified food. Now one may say, well, then I can offer anything, and Krishna will take away the sin. No, he is very specific about the offerings. In fact, if we want to, learn more about this process of eating prasadam, you can look for a book called The Higher Taste online. I'm sure you'll find it online, The Higher Taste. It gives very good description about, karma-free diet, how we can eat in such a way, what we can eat so that we do not incur any more sin. Next verse, number 27, beautiful verse. Yad karoshi, yad ashnashi, yad juhoshi, dadashi, yad. Krishna says, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. In other words, he is giving us, showing another mercy. He's saying that if you do this, then you become free from bondage. So for us, this is a very good verse. It's a nice indication of how we can progress spiritually. He says, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, austerities, anything that we do, so our duty should be to mold our lives in such a way that we do not forget Krishna. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Always remembering, always chanting. Now, of course, we learned in chapter 2, work is important. We have to work. We have to maintain the body and soul together. So how should we work? In chapter 3 and 5, Krishna tells us, do a karma. Perform your activities according to the scriptures, but do not desire to enjoy the results of your activities. So here it is talking about charity. Charity needs to be done, given, but it has to be given to the right person. And what about the austerity? The austerity that is very, very important in Kali Yuga is chanting the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That is the process of self-realization in Kali Yuga. Next verse. In this way, you will be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. So here we have a choice. Do I want to come back into this material world and go through the cycle of suffering of birth, disease, old age, death? Or do I want to break this cycle and go to the spiritual world, my original home, where there is permanent happiness and peace and there is no birth and death? So we make a choice. And here Krishna says how we can go back. What can we do? That we have to fix our mind. Fix our mind on Krishna. Now, fixing mind on Krishna is not easy. That is why the simple method of chanting is given to us. So when we chant regularly on a daily basis, then our mind starts getting trained. And then we gradually start becoming free from bondage, right? And that is a stage of liberation, which is called Yukta Vairagya. And that is possible when we perform our activities on the platform of akarma. This will lead us to self-realization, and then we'll be able to reach the spiritual planet, which is the perfection of life. It is said in the purport that when we perform our karma, that is equal to being a sannyasi, a renunciate. Right? Why? Because the person is performing work without desire for results, working as an eternal servant of the Supreme Lord, performing devotional service. So one gets liberated even in this body. How? By thinking about Krishna, by serving him with devotion. And that we can do only when we chant the holy name. Let's read number 29. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. You see, He does not envy anyone, nor is he partial. Now, in purport, it says, one may question here that if Krishna is equal to everyone and no one is his special friend, then why does he take a special interest in the devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental service? But this is not discrimination. Discrimination, it is natural. Any man in this material world may be very charitably disposed, yet he has a special interest in his own children. You see, the Lord claims that every living entity in whatever form is his son, and so he provides everyone with a generous supply of the necessities of life. So Krishna is equal to all, but he is favorably inclined towards his devotees. He gives special attention. Why? Because devotees are like his friends. You see, we keep talking about Krishna consciousness. What does that mean? That means we become conscious of Krishna. That means we remember him, we think of him, we chant his glories, we chant his holy name. This is how we become his friend. And not only we becoming conscious of Krishna, but Krishna also becoming conscious of us. Again, we have a choice. Ye yatha mam prapadyanti tam satheva bhajamiham. Krishna says, as one surrenders unto me, I reward them accordingly. So it's our desire. In fact, he reciprocates based on our desire, based on our sincerity and seriousness, right? That is a transcendental situation. Let's read verse number 30. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Even if most abominable, which means has committed some abominable sinful activity, still he's considered saintly. Why? Because he's properly situated in devotional service in determination. Now, this is this is a verse that can be misused. People may say, oh, if I commit some sinful activity, I will still be excused. I will still be considered saintly because I'm chanting the holy names of the Lord. No, this is not an excuse to commit any sins. But here what he's talking about, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport very nicely, that if by accident a devotee commits a sinful activity, then he is still considered saintly, right? He will quickly become righteous because he is chanting. So Prabhupada in his purport explains there are two kinds of people, conditional and constitutional, those who are conditioned and those who are on the transcendental platform. Now, conditioned means those who are on the bodily platform who think I am this body, excuse me, I'm this body and works only for the satisfaction of the body. Whereas those who are on the transcendental platform are actually in their constitutional position. Why? Because they are Krishna conscious, they are devotees. So when a person is in devotional service, is performing devotional, the activity may look like it's material, but it is actually transcendental. Why? Because he is performing activities as a service for Krishna. So now devotional service causes him to be uplifted. So ideally, this is important, ideally he should not commit any sinful activities, right? He should understand that I am a devotee, so I have to be careful, right? There should be that attitude of materialism should not be there. That is not allowed, see. But while performing devotional service, if accidentally he commits sin and he's still engaged in devotional service, then Krishna will pardon him and purify him. But it's very important to be alert and not think that, oh, I can commit sins and then I can chant, then I can commit some more sins and then I can chant. No, that is not what Krishna is talking about. You see, then Krishna, of course, Krishna consciousness gives us an opportunity to rectify, but it should not be intentional. The sinful activity should not be intentional. So based on the purport that I was reading for this verse, Prabhupada gives 2 points. He says that if one is doing devotional service and accidentally commits a sin and it is unacceptable socially, he is not disqualified. Why? Because it's a temporary fall down. It's not a permanent fall down. But when in association with such a devotee who is, so what he's talking about is that when in association of such devotee who's doing abominable act, one should not deride him. They say, oh, look at that devotee. He or she is chanting Hare Krishna, but still is committing some abominable activity. One should not deride. Why? Because Krishna says such a devotee is still saintly. Why? Because he's still doing devotional service. So, if we are chanting and we are Krishna conscious with determination, then we are on the transcendental position. Nice example is given in the purport about the moon. You see, moon gives us nice moonlight, but it has spots, right? They say chand mein daag hai, right? The moon has what they call the craters. The craters, they do not affect the ability of giving moonlight, right? The moonlight is not stopped because of those spots, right? So similarly, a Krishna conscious person, a devotee, rectifies accidental fall down. A nice example is given in Srimad Bhagavatam about Ajamil. I don't know if any of you have heard about Ajamil, but Ajamil, was a Brahmana. He was a devotee. He performed devotional service for many years. But after a while, one day while he was, walking in the forest, he saw a prostitute along with a man, embracing that man. And then he immediately started having a desire to associate with that prostitute. And then that is how it was his fall down, right? And for many years, he lived with that prostitute and had children also. He had a son whom he named Narayan, you see. And of course, when the Yamadutas came to take him, pull his soul from his body, he remembered his son Narayan, but he chanted Narayan offenselessly. And that's when the Vishnu Dutas came and protected him and told the Yamadutas, no, you cannot take him because he chanted the name of Narayan. Now, Ajamil was a wonderful devotee, but he had that fall down. So this is what he's talking about here. Let's go to verse number 31. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. Na me bhaktaha pranashyati. That means my devotee never perishes. See? So constant thinking of Krishna purifies one and contamination is removed. And remembrance is a purifying process. See, chanting is very important because that is what gives us protection. If we are not chanting, hearing, remembering Krishna, then how can we be considered as devotees? And if we are not considered as devotees, then where is the protection? Because Krishna is saying, my devotee never perishes. Which means he is indicating that we need to take his shelter. Then we will get the protection and then we will be able to reach our destination. Verse number 32. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, merchants, and Shudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination. You see? Now one may argue about this verse and say, oh, why are they saying that women, Vaishya, Shudras are of lower birth? Well, good news is that when we start understanding Bhagavad Gita and we start following this process mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, when we start becoming Krishna conscious, we start uplifting ourselves from the bodily platform, right? We do not consider ourselves as body. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I am white, I'm black. We don't make any distinction. There is no discrimination. Everybody is the same. There's no distinction between lower class or higher class. That is a bodily platform. if I consider I'm a woman, that is on the bodily platform. So it's important that when we read Bhagavad Gita, associate with Srila Prabhupada in his purpose, that association with pure devotees, that leads us to purification, and that leads us to the understanding that I am not this body. You see, that leads us to our highest perfectional goal. Verse number 33. How much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary, miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. See how important. Krishna is making it very clear that the place where we are in, the material world, is temporary and miserable. It's full of miseries. So it's like, trying to find happiness in a place where there is no happiness. It's a place of misery. It's not a place of happiness. So how can we find happiness? One may say, oh, I'm a very happy person. I'm very peaceful. Prabhupada explains, those who say I am happy, that means they are in a state where the sadness is less. When there is less sadness, it appears to be happiness. Why? Because the sadness is reduced. You see? So this world is temporary. It's not false, but it is just temporary. So an intelligent person will think, why shouldn't I go to a permanent place? Like, for instance, I'm sure you all have experienced that moving from one apartment to another or from one house to another is a painful process, right? You have to pack everything and then move and then unpack everything. And we have a tendency to have so much stuff in our house that it takes us days, and it takes us some friends to help us to pack and then also to unpack. That's so that is like moving from one house to another. Is like moving from one body to another. Why are we going after temporary lease? Let me take a lease in a different body for X number of years, just like we take a lease in an apartment for 1 year or 2 years or whatever. Why should we do that? Hop from one body to another. Why not just go to a permanent place? So if we take the instructions of Krishna from Bhagavad Gita to heart, then we can quickly become qualified to go back to that permanent place. 34, very important. Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. There's a guarantee, right? Guarantee of going back to Krishna Loka. But just see how many times he says, me, my, me, 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 me. How many times? See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Krishna is making it so clear that he does not want our mind, our remembrance, our thinking to anybody else. It is only to me. He says, engage your mind in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. Be completely absorbed in me. Surely you will come to me. You see? He wants us to become his devotees because that is the highest perfection. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. There is no one equal to him. There is no one above him, right? So if we worship, and when there is complete absorption, see, our mind, it needs training. Our mind is flickering. It is so fickle. It just keeps going here, there, everywhere. So one needs to control the mind. One needs to bring it to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. And the best way to do that is by chanting the holy names of the Lord. When we chant the Maha Mantra, the sound vibrations that go in the ear, they go straight into the heart where the mind is and tries to control that mind. So when we follow this process, then only we will be able to go to our final destination, which is Krishna Loka. So according to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna consciousness is the only way. So why should we waste our human form of life, right? Of course, Krishna, we have heard all this while in all these chapters that he is the Supreme Lord, he is the absolute truth, and there is no difference between Krishna, his mind, his body, everything is transcendental, right? Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, that is how his form is. So when we think of Krishna, it's important to think of him favorably, not like Kamsa, right? Kamsa was very envious of Krishna. He thought of Krishna all the time, but unfavorably. So here, Bhakti Yoga is the process. And of course, if we can follow Bhakti Yoga under the guidance of a devotee, then we'll be able to engage our mind, in the form of Krishna, offer obeisances to him, bow down to him. You see, engage our mind, body activities, everything in the service of Krishna. And Prahlad Maharaj has given us 9 processes. And the first one is Shravanam, hearing, then Kirtanam, chanting. So this is how we'll be able to become more and more Krishna conscious. Actually, chapter 7 and 8, they talk about pure devotional service. And of course, this chapter 9, we have already heard, how Krishna is giving us knowledge about the whole process of going back to Godhead. You see, so we need to decide, what do we want to do? We want to go back to our original home, or do we want to come back and suffer? If we want to go back, then we need to follow the process. There has to be discipline, right? There has to be determination, the choice we have to make. You see, so this is how this chapter ends, the most confidential knowledge. The very last verse which we read is the most important verse of this chapter, where Krishna says, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Man mana bhav mad bhakto. So I'm going to end here if anyone has any questions.
Hare Krishna, Gita ji.
Yes.
Actually, when we start of thinking about Krishna, and for example, I will say, like when we prepare boga, first we will think about Krishna and prepare. But while preparing itself, we will getting into the thought, oh, I should not put too spice, then Radha will not eat. I should separately put spice because Jashwant likes to have spicy. Something like that. We are first starting. We have consciousness. Then later, it is getting into people who are in that house, that okay, this vegetable is favorite for him, like that we are diverting our consciousness, but our intention is to have prasadam only. How we have to purify this way, this month?
Yes, that'll come with practice. You see, in the beginning, we will try. The consciousness will be that, let me cook what I like to eat. You see, that consciousness will be there, but that's okay as long as we follow the process. We offer the food in the mode of goodness, which is not tasted, or you don't smell the food, and you offer it with a tulasi leaf and offer the prayers, and sincerely pray to Krishna to accept that offering, which you're offering with love and devotion. And then, of course, serve that prasadam to the family. Yes, being in the family life, we do also have to consider, whether it's spicy or not, or you especially having little kids, have to keep in mind also what your children are going to eat. You cook what your children are going to eat, but the idea is to not eat anything. Nothing should go in our mouth which is not offered to the Supreme Lord, so that we do not incur sinful reactions. So that is the point. But once we follow this process, and then gradually with the purification, then the consciousness will start also getting purified, where the thought will come, oh, let me also grow some vegetables for the Lord, like in the sattva gun. Let me, grow those vegetables and cook them for his pleasure, that gradually that stage will come. But it's important to offer food to the Lord. Otherwise, we eat only sin. Is that okay?
Thank you, Gita ji. Yes.
Sure. Any other question?
I need to ask one thing, Gita ji. I think it's not from the chapter or anything, but I think more of to know about the information. So we know that this Bhagavad Gita, when it is spoken, it comes as it is in the disciplic succession from Sun God to Narad Muni and to so on. I just want to understand that does that comes as a part of all the shlokas that are there and their meaning that we read, and the purport in is explicitly by what Srila Prabhupada thinks and what he has put in his examples, or those purports also come in and those translations also come in that disciplic succession?
Yes, very good. So, yes, as we learned in chapter 4 that, this transcendental knowledge is coming down in strict disciplic succession. So, talking about the knowledge, when Krishna spoke this, gave this knowledge to Brahma, right? If you look at the introduction, the last page of introduction, there is a list of parampara. So this Bhagavad Gita, I gave it to Brahma, to Narada, to Vyasa, and this is how it came down to Srila Prabhupada. Now, the shlokas are given and it is explained. It is explained. Now, in those days, especially even 5,000 years ago when Krishna was speaking to Arjuna, there was no need for him to have a book. Whatever he heard stayed with him, right? But in Kali Yuga, our memory is really bad, so it has to be put on paper because we have to keep reading again and again. So whatever purpose Srila Prabhupada has given is what he has heard from his guru, right? And also he has taken from the purports of other acharyas like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, right? So he has also taken purports from other acharyas, and then he has put them in the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Because if you see, if you just read the translation, it is not very easy for us to understand, right? But Srila Prabhupada breaks it down so nicely that, we are able to really understand the words that Krishna is speaking. So this is how it is. Okay. All right. Any other question? Okay. So we will see you next Wednesday. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna, thank you.
Thank you.